For more Magic the Gathering resources, check out my friends at paperchampion.net and Kitchen Table MTG. Hey everybody, this is Tao at The Forge, and this week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be bringing you guys a deck that's in Standard. Normally I do Modern, but I was down in my LGS the other day, and one of my friends down there said, hey, come check out the new deck I put together, and pulled out this Standard deck and said, what do you think? And I was like, I don't know, it's kind of weird, and I don't really see, how everything goes together. Usually the decks that I look at in Modern have a very singular focus, they're just trying to get something done, but this one's kind of a little bit weird, and so I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. So I went home and I put this same deck together and decided to try it out. And before I begin, a couple things. First of all, of course, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps, if you share the videos or anything just to help the channel grow is really appreciated. But also a shout out to all LGSs. For those of you guys that don't know, LGS stands for Local Game Store. And basically, I just want to say we should all try and support the local game stores as much as possible, because they provide not just a place to play Magic and purchase Magic products, but also a place for people to make friends and for a community to build. It's just a really great place, and this is a great example where I met someone there, and just from seeing them, they became kind of a friend, and then they're showing me a deck, and it just leads to good gameplay and just a good community. So let's make sure we do support our local game shops as much as possible. Alright, so getting into this, we have basically a Jund Reanimator deck. And the weird thing about it is that it plays a lot like the modern Jund deck, right? In that it basically is a toolbox. So there's some cards that are just like mana ramping, and other ones that are going in just basically it's red, black, and green good stuff, right? So I'll show you the deck and we'll see. I'll tell you a little bit how it goes. I didn't build this deck, so it's kind of weird for me to be telling you about it, and I don't know all the interactions, but there's a lot, and it's actually extremely competitive. I've played maybe 3 or 4 matches with it so far, and I'm going to be trying to play some throughout the week, and I haven't lost any at all. As far as the going out of 3 matches, I may have lost 1, but then the next 2 I won, or I've won 1 and lost the next 2. I'll be posting. I've got 2 videos recorded that I'll be posting pretty much as soon as I can right after this deck tech. But overall, I have been undefeated with it, and it's really, really powerful. Alright, so I'll get into the lands a little bit later, but let's just get started with the cards. So in the 1 mana slot, we've got Fatal Push, and Fatal Push is, basically the best black removal you can get. It's definitely worth it, and I think 3 of is the right number. Traverse the Ulvenwald. Now, we're basically going to be getting Delirium online fairly often with this deck, but Traverse the Ulvenwald is not something that you're really going to ever feel sad to see. Well, maybe late game or something like that. If you need to top deck something to save your butt, then maybe Traverse the Ulvenwald is not the right thing, but even then it could be. So, here's the thing. In early game, you're going to be using it to get a land card, and just to get your mana online. But then in the late game, you're probably going to have Delirium online, and then you can basically use it to search out a creature. And because this is kind of like the modern Jund, where it's just a toolbox, you're going to just look for whatever creature you need. And I actually managed to pull this out. I think in one match I pulled out I needed something to destroy a creature that had what's that stupid dragon? I think it's a 4/5 dragon that whenever you cast a spell against it, you have to copy it against all your other creatures. I was like, oh man, I can't get rid of this thing. And then I was like, oh, I could basically just get a Noxious Gearhulk and destroy it with this ETB trigger. So anyways, it was actually pretty sweet. So this card is really, really powerful in this deck. I definitely would keep a 4 of. Alright, so Vessel of Nascency is one that I really haven't had a chance to use very much, but being able to put a card basically reveal the top 4 cards of your library, put an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker from among them into your hand. Basically, it's just a quick way to maybe get a few cards, and then putting the rest in your graveyard helps to feed your graveyard strategy, and we're going to be using quite a bit of that. Alright, Channeler Initiate is awesome. I really like this card a lot. So when it enters the battlefield, you put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. It's probably going to go on itself, right? And then what you can do is remove the -1/-1 counters and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So early game, this turns basically into a mana dork, but as the game progresses, it's no longer a mana dork and just becomes a 3/4 beater, which is just really good. So I'm all for Channeler Initiate. I think it's like an awesome card, and I've definitely used it in almost every single match I've played. Grappler with the Past. Put the top 3 cards of your library into the graveyard, then you return a creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, basically milling into the graveyard and then putting something back into your hand. And this allows us to toolbox what we need. So we're going to get a bunch of our creatures in there, and we can just pull out like whatever it is that happens to suit us at that time. Alright, Servant of the Conduit is basically almost the same thing as Channeler Initiate. Comes into the battlefield. It's a 2/2 for 2, which is already pretty good. It gives us 2 energy, and then you can use it, tap that to get the mana that you need, so it can help you to get the mana online. I'd say this card is probably one, if you're sideboarding, you might be able to remove. Mainly because it's just, I haven't really missed it that much. It's just nice, and it fits in that 2-drop spot. Alright, Grim Flayer. Grim Flayer is awesome. Right, like I said, because we're milling so many cards of our own, we basically get Delirium online all the time, which means that Grim Flayer is going to be a 4/4 with Trample, and then basically you can put kind of semi-scry, so you can scry some cards to the top of your library, the rest go into the graveyard. And so if you've got some of the other cards, like the Reanimation type cards, then you can actually just put them into the graveyard and then toolbox them out later. So Grim Flayer, definitely a good presence on the board, and something that your opponents almost certainly have to get rid of right away, or at least within a few turns. Okay, so Tireless Tracker is another 3/2 for 3. Basically, this is just a great card. You can basically get a bunch of clues for it, gives you a little bit of card draw, and then this card can actually get pretty big pretty fast, especially because we're playing Evolving Wilds. So we can play Evolving Wilds, crack it, get another land drop, grab another clue, and then later on when we've got extra mana, we can just crack the clues. One thing is also, like, I should mention, when you have the ability to tap for mana, you almost always want to use Channeler Initiate as much as you can early game, because you want to turn it into a beater as fast as possible. Of course, like if you're totally mana screwed, then be careful with how you use it, but in general I found that I just want to basically get those counters off of her right away. Alright, Unlicensed Disintegration is just a great creature destruction spell. You almost never have an I don't think you ever have an artifact. You might have one as a clue token from Tireless Tracker, but in general, I haven't really had an artifact when I cast this. But still, just basically, who cares about the 3 damage? Like, you're going to be beating them down for a ton of damage anyways, so definitely is worth it, even without the 3 damage. Alright, so just moving on, okay, into our bigger slots here. We got a couple Chandra, Torch of Defiance. So again, Chandra basically is going to give us that extra mana, and also be able to just do 2 damage to your opponent, or cast the top card of your library. Yeah, just a great card, a pretty sweet planeswalker. Arlinn Kord, again, probably another really interesting one that you don't see very often. Okay, so you can, up to 1 target creature gets +2/+2, gains vigilance. You're probably not going to use that very much, but you're probably going to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token and transform her. And then creatures you control get +1/+1. You can do 3 damage to target creature or player and transform her back. And basically forms almost like a kind of quasi removal, in the game. Right? So Liliana, Death's Majesty, is a superstar in this deck. Yeah, she's just so good. So 5 mana, you get her out. Now, you can often get her out a lot faster, especially if you've got the Channeler Initiates. right? So Channeler Initiates can help you to ramp up your mana, get Liliana Death's Majesty out, you're creating zombies, or if you happen to have already, like let's say for instance you had the Grim Flayer out, you put a bunch of cards in your graveyard, you can pull a big fatty out of there and just put it onto the battlefield, right? Like return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's huge, right? It's ridiculous. That creature is a black zombie. Okay, who cares, right? Like, you know. Anyways, Liliana's Death's Majesty is one of the best cards in the deck. Definitely worth it. I would almost never sideboard her out. Alright, Glorybringer. Glorybringer is another superstar. So flying haste 4/4 for 5, and you can often cheat this into the battlefield. And you can exert it and deals 4 damage to target non-dragon creature and opponent controls. So basically it's a form of removal. Now, one of the mistakes I did do with Glorybringer at first was that I often would, well, not often because I haven't played very often, but in one of my matches I was exerting Glorybringer almost every time. And basically I was like, you know, get rid of 1/1s and stuff like that. It's not always necessary to do that. Just take your beats from the 1/1 and you can just race them. Like Glorybringer, let's say if you exert it twice, that's going to do 8 damage in 4 turns. If you don't exert it, it's going to do 16 damage in 4 turns. Right, so that's going to put a huge pressure on your opponent, and who cares if they have a 1/1 or a 2/2 beating you down? You know, like in general, that's not going to be that important. So be careful how you exert Glorybringer, because it definitely can be kind of a mistake to do it all the time. Ishkanah Grafwidow is another sweet card. So you're often going to have Delirium, so when she enters the battlefield, there are 4 more cards. You get 3 1/2 green spider tokens, and then you can also tap for 6 and a black. Target opponent loses 1 life for each spider you control. Now, the one thing is that if someone destroys Ishkanah, you can later on bring her back from the graveyard and then create more spider tokens, right? So another good toolbox card to create a whole bunch of chump blockers if you really need them. Alright, we also got Noxious Gearhulk. So when it enters the battlefield, you destroy another target creature. If it's destroyed this way, you gain life equal to its toughness. Now, late game, this can be a total lifesaver. So you enter the battlefield, destroy one of your opponent's creatures, you get some life back for it. Now you got a 5/4 with Menace. That's actually just huge. You know, so Noxious Gearhulk, another superstar in the deck. I try and get it out as much as possible. Alright, so going on, we got Never and Return. This is just creature and planeswalker removal. Now, we've also got things like Unlicensed Disintegration, as I spoke about, but you should try and use Unlicensed Disintegration first and hold this up in case your opponent drops a planeswalker on you. Right? And then the return side, exile target card from graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Alright, that could help if your opponent, especially if your opponent's playing stuff that you want to get out of their graveyard. But in general, like, you know, I guess if you got nothing else to do with your 4 mana, then you can get a 4 mana 2/2 zombie token. But okay, that side is just alright. Alright, let's go on. We've got 2 of Cut to Ribbons. Alright, so Cut deals 4 damage to target creature. Again, it's just removal, a really good removal actually. And then the other side, Ribbons, is each opponent loses X life. Now, the thing is, your opponent's often going to forget that that's in the graveyard, or they'll see it, but they'll forget about the ability. And it's just a good finisher. Like, let's say they're down to like 3 life or something like that. You know, you can, late game, you can just tap, you know, for 5 or something like that and do the 3 damage to your opponent. You know, and just finish them off that way, even though they might not expect it. So, anyways, I really like that card a lot. Okay, now going to the mana. Mana is a little bit weird, right? Because we're playing 3 colors, it's kind of difficult to get all of them online. But there's actually, in most matches, I've never been mana screwed at all. Like, I've been able to get all the mana out, mostly untapped for the most part. So, anyways, the mana base is actually really good. So, Blooming Marsh, 4 of them is just some fast lands. Okay, Canyon Slough enters into the battlefield tapped. Is that slow or sloth? I don't know. But it's also a swamp or a mountain, which is actually pretty important for some of these other lands. Evolving Wilds helps us to tutor out some of the other cards we might need. All right, a pair of forests, game trails. So you may reveal a mountain or forest card from your hand, and that's why Canyon Slough or Slough is going to come in handy, because it's a mountain. Alright, Hissing Quagmire enters the battlefield tapped, but can become a black elemental with Death Touch, so that's kind of a nice thing. A pair of mountains, 2 Sheltered Thickets, which are mountain and forests, so you can cycle them if you really need to, and then some swamps, a set of swamps, and that's it for the deck. The deck is, like I said, looks kind of weird because it doesn't play a lot of 4-ofs, but the reason why, remember, is because it's just a toolbox. You're basically going to be finding ways to just get the cards you need, and play, like I said, that's a lot like the Jund or Junk decks in Modern as well. Alright, so going to sideboard. Okay, so in the sideboard, we got one. Again, this is, to me, kind of a weird sideboard. And like I said, I didn't build the deck, but often my sideboards are like one. I rarely have ones of in the sideboard. It's usually like 3s or 4s of. And the reason why is because I know what the weaknesses of my deck are, and so I want to kind of patch them up with some consistency. So adding a 1 of a card doesn't often help. Because like you got 1 out of 60 chance of drawing it on any particular draw, and that's not exactly true because the math gets weird. But having a 1 of in your deck, that's going to save your ass doesn't really help all the time. But in this deck, you can actually usually just find the cards that you need fairly easily. So in this deck, it's pretty good. All right, so we got a Scarab Feast, exile up to 3 target cards from a single graveyard. Okay, that's just Wrexham graveyard strategies. Natural State, destroying targets or artifacts or enchantments. Transgress the Mind for a little bit of hand disruption, especially if they're playing big fatties or really expensive enchantments. Okay, so Dispossess, choose an artifact card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for the number of cards of the chosen name, and exile them. Okay, Painful Truths. Basically, draw X cards, you lose X life, where X is the number of colors you cost to play that. That's just for some extra card draw if you need it. Sweltering Suns is just mass removal. Okay, it deals 3 damage to each creature. Remember, that's even to your own creatures, so be careful how you use it. Manglehorn. Okay, so when Manglehorn enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact. Artifacts your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. Now these, a lot of these artifact destruction cards are mainly against the Mardu Vehicles type deck. So anyways, that's why they're in there. Alright. Kalitas, Traitor of Ghet. Basically, if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile that card and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Alright, and then you can basically pump him as well. Alright, so we got Ob Nixilis for some card draw, some creature destruction. Ishkanah, just another Ishkanah in case you need more beaters. And by force, destroy X target artifacts, which is just actually really, really huge, especially against the vehicles deck. So again, that's basically the deck, Jund Reanimator. It's really, really powerful. I really like it a lot. And like I said, I don't play a standard that often, but I've seriously won like every single match. And I'm not even that familiar with the meta. This isn't even like a deck that I put together, and like I was able to pick it up and just see that it's just like red, white, black, good stuff. Anyways, if there are suggestions you think that you could, make this deck even better, or there's something better in the sideboard or whatever, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd really like to hear it. Maybe there's some way we can make this deck even more powerful. Anyways, that's it for this. That's it for this deck tech. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. It's that time again for a random card review, where we pick a random card and, well, we review it. So let's take a look. And we have Genesis. Alright, so Genesis is 4 and a green for a 4/4 creature incarnation. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Genesis is in your graveyard, you may pay 2 and a green. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. That is actually pretty sweet. Basically, the ability to be able to pump this, like have a 4/4 for 5, which is pretty decent, but then be able to pay 3 mana and toolbox any card from your graveyard back to your hand is actually a very, very strong ability. I'd say, if it was put it onto the battlefield, it'd just be totally broken. But, putting it into your hand is still pretty fair. I would hope that, like, if your opponent saw this, they'd pretty much have to be able to, like, find some graveyard removal to kind of get rid of this. So definitely, I think it deserves a 4-star rating. It's not totally broken, so, maybe not a 5, but, that's a very good card. Anyways, that's my review. If you have any comments on Genesis, or if you've seen it used in other decks, I believe I've actually heard about this being used in some decks or in Commander or something like that. But let me know. Put it into the comments, and if you know where you've seen it played, I'd like to hear about it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.